Many thanks for joining us on the program. My name is Felicity Eziwike. Corruption has been in the spotlight in South Africa for several years, particularly since the launch of the state capture inquiry in 2018. The deep divisions in the ruling party, the African National Congress, ANC, and now the Phala Phala scandal seem to be exacerbating things. Some allege there is a pattern here. Let me lay it out, and our guest will help us get some perspective. Jacob Zuma served as deputy president under President Thabo Mbeki from 1999 until Mbeki dismissed him in 2005 in connection with corruption charges. Now, Zuma mobilized a faction within the party to usurp Mbeki's leadership of the ANC, which he succeeded in doing in December 2007. The party leadership forced Mbeki to resign as president of the country in September 2008. Zuma himself was elected president in 2009 and maintained this position until the situation of 2018. Is there a pattern? What does it mean for South Africa? And, of course, its seeming faltering anti-corruption fight. My guest is Puleng Mabe, a South African politician and member of the African National Congress. He is the current national spokesperson for the ANC. He joins us now from South Africa. Thanks for joining us.
Evening and evening to your viewers.
Let's begin by getting some perspective on what the politics looks like in South Africa. If you could describe it for us.
Well, the past few days have been a bit hectic. First, brought about by the release of the Section 89 report. Now, Section 89 reports are carried forward by Parliament. So that is a parliamentary process in an instance where you want to, or a political party represented in Parliament puts forward a motion of impeachment or motion of no confidence. What that process does is that it establishes the grounds, whether there are sufficient grounds, prima facie evidence for such to be undertaken. It does not speak to the guilt or innocence of individuals involved. Now, the Section 89 reports that was now being presented with recommendations involved the person of our president on what has now come to be known as the Phala Phala farm gate. So there are a number of issues that were raised there, arising out of what was put forward by one political party here in South Africa as part of the impeachment, to initiate the impeachment process against the president of the country, who's also the president of the African National Congress. So out of that, those recommendations, the ANC then convened an urgent special national executive committee. Number of media reports came out suggesting that the president of the ANC, in his capacity as president of the country, might be wanting to step down. All of this were ventilated out there in the media, even before the ANC could sit. By the time the ANC set its NEC, there was already growing concern on whether the president will continue. Now, given the kind of, while we run a mixed market economy, there is a really great interest in our country by the markets and citizens themselves and all of that. So anything that suggests that a president may be stepping down when you are a year away from general elections is bound to create panic amongst citizens. So that was the case. Of course, that does not take away the question you have raised, which is the impact of the notion of corruption in our life as a country, and what that does to our own sustenance of the democratic order that President Mandela and his generation stood and fought for. The ANC as an organization is quite committed to root out instances of corruption, of malfeasance. It has spoken about that. It has developed resolutions that begins to speak about what it will do as mechanisms to try and curb that. It has gone out to the public to forge a national compact, which is based on its commitment to fighting corruption, its commitment to installing a credible ethical leadership at various levels, making sure that we return institutions of state to levels of accountability, of being responsiveness and showing regard to the interest of the people who have put us in these positions of responsibility.
All right,
So
I wanted you to. I wanted you to land before I interject and just ask really, a lot has been done, I mean, by the president in an effort to fight corruption, which is part of the conversation we're having today, which is the crux of the conversation we're having today. But with recent developments, do you think that maybe these latest events in South African political space has diminished the work that the ANC had done so far?
Not quite. I mean, we are fairly a young democracy. We have been able to demonstrate and display our capacity to emerge even much stronger from some of these rough seas. We take every challenge that we come across as a lesson that teaches us to hold on to the promises we made to our people, to be answerable, to be accountable, to do everything else that the people of this country expect from us. It is not an easy task. It didn't start with President Matamela Ramaphosa. It didn't start with President Zuma. It didn't start with President Mbeki. It didn't start even with President Mandela. When we wrote our document on Ready to Govern in the early 90s, what we also said was that the institutions that we will create will be ones that unite our people, ones that drive forward programs that will make sure that each and every one of South Africa's people, black and white, could be able to locate themselves in the plans we are putting forward. That is why the ANC's manifesto of our driving forward of the Ready to Govern plan of 1994 effectively spoke about how we are going to make sure that those who don't have shelter, regardless of where they live, have got shelter. That in schools, those who do not have food are part of the school feeding schemes. That our grandmothers, the aged, the disabled, kids who do not have parents, those kids whose mothers are unemployed would be part of the social security scheme. We introduced the social security plan, mounted it out, and today has got over 17 million beneficiaries in the country to be able to make sure that we provide relief for everyone. So
all this does. I'm sorry to keep interjecting. I'm sorry to keep interjecting.
Can I conclude my point?
Okay, go ahead.
All of the things that we have done are a demonstration that ours has always been about placing the people first.
Okay, if I may say this, you said something about these corruption allegations didn't start with even Nelson Mandela himself, that it didn't start with any of these men. Does it justify its seeming continuity? That would be a question that will just come to anybody's mind. And that is on one part of the question. The other part is, in my introduction, I talked about pattern that seems to be emerging when it comes to the politics and leadership and the exchange of power in ANC. When people talk about this, what kind of feedback would you give to them to sort of allay the concerns, which a lot of persons will say are genuine?
Can you just, I'm trying to understand the context.
Okay,
you do to say the fears. Because I don't think we fully understood each other. The point I was making was that it was more on the positive, that the fight against corruption is one that predates now. As early as 1990, when it was now clear, the path was now clear that we are going to emerge as a government of the people.
Okay, I think we're actually saying the same thing, Mr. Mbappe, because if you look at it, there is, on one hand, there is a fight against corruption. On the other hand, there seems to be consistent allegations of corruption on the various leadership of the ANC it seems like at every point in time. So my question is, when people come up with this kind of concern, when you say it didn't start with them, but it seems to be something that is continuing, what would you say to allay concerns which are genuine? That's my question. I think even if you flip it on the other side, it still connects with what you're saying.
Well, the reality is that when you are a governing party, when you occupy the seat of government, when you preside over national resources, when you are responsible to create jobs, collect taxes, and cater for the welfare of citizens, it follows that you will also be accused about all manner of things. Because corruption itself, being an act of malfeasance, of mismanagement of public resources, misconduct of individuals or persons put in those positions of responsibility, could often be used rightfully or wrongfully by those even in the opposition benches to garner support, to project the government of the day as failing to fulfill its responsibilities to lead and govern the people. Those are the realities that you live with in a democracy. Because democracies create platforms of contestations, it follows that the ones that will will make the loudest noises as it relates to corruption will be parties that are contesting with the African National Congress, will be formations or organizations, non-governmental organizations, faith-based formations at times, that come out to raise their own concerns about the leaders, the management of public resources, and what is happening to effectively sustain public life.
Okay, so let me ask, what is happening if there seems to be like continuous over people that are trying to take power from the ANC? Then this controversy, what is it truly about? Is it that what the panel found was, there is some truth to what the panel found, or it's all a lie? So people get things in, because the story, I'm not in South Africa, you are in South Africa, so you educate us a little more, sir.
Well, I wouldn't know, because the organization I belong to, the African, it's a political party. We do not conduct criminal investigations ourselves. In South Africa, we've got a strong police service with investigative capacity and capability. That work is not being done by the ANC. The ANC, for its own sake, has established the Integrity Commission, so that where there are matters of integrity that involves its own leaders, such leaders could then be asked to appear before the Integrity Commission and answer for those. We have found this mechanism to be working. It has allowed us to be accountable, to be answerable, to be responsive and responsible. It allows us to place before our members and the public the steps and measures we have undertaken to deal with cases that would have involved our leaders. In the past, the ANC has even had to take harsh decisions involving even those of their comrades who are in leadership structures. Remember that coming out of the 2016 National General Council, we had adopted the policy on step aside. Directed by the conference, we developed a clear framework on what needed to be done. We said when cadres of the ANC are criminally charged or indicted to appear in a court of law, such cadres will be asked to step aside from their positions of responsibility. If they so refuse, we'll activate a section in the constitution of the ANC that empowers leadership structures to impose temporary suspension. It is all of these mechanisms that have allowed the ANC to fulfill its role and responsibility of leading our people. All of these instruments have seen us begin to win and renew our trust with the people. We said the next 10 years must be about the renewal of the organization, which means the men and women that we place in positions of responsibility must be those that could win and earn the ANC the trust of the people it leads. The strategy and tactics of the African National Congress speaks about us fulfilling the role of transforming society. We will be unable to fulfill that noble task if we do not occupy the position of governing our people. Because it is through governance, directing of public resources, that will be able to fulfill this which is required from us, the transformation of society. What you find written under the insignia of the African National Congress is better life for all. That is what each and every cadre of the ANC in leadership structures, who's a member of the African National Congress, who joined this voluntarily, understand us to be working towards. Not to fulfill the interest of those that are members of the ANC or occupy positions of leadership. We said we will not show any sign of being selflessness if everything else we do is about ourselves. We know fully well that an inward-looking ANC will not be able to win the trust of the people it leads.
All right.
We've got to be out there and allow ourselves to be called names by the people, because the position that we had said we'll occupy is one that places serious demands and strains on us in the leadership.
Mr. Mbeb, if you let me ask another question. Jacob Zuma resigned as South Africa's president on the eve of the no-confidence vote, stepping down days after defying ANC, the party's orders to leave office. What do you expect to see happen to Ramaphosa in Ramaphosa's case?
Well, I've often said that we can't compare these instances. There is nothing that suggests that President Ramaphosa must leave office. He's still very much the president of the African National Congress. He will deliver the political overview next week when we sit our 55th National Conference. The National Executive Committee that said over this weekend, we had a special session that concluded yesterday, was not about discussing whether the president should step aside or not. It was about giving directive to our own caucus in Parliament on how they should relate with the recommendations. And our directive to them is very clear, that we do not accept the recommendations. We also recognize the fact that the president of the ANC, in his capacity as president of the Republic, has taken that report for review.
Still staying with the developments with the case, Ramaphosa assumed leadership of the ANC after a narrow win to get Zuma out. Yet I understand that Zuma retains considerable influence within the party. My question would be, what role does these factions in the party continue to play in the politics of the ANC?
Well, look, instances of factionalism fuel divisions in the organization. We always call on our members to desist from such, carry themselves in a manner and way that helps us consolidate the unity of the organization. Unfortunately, even if we try and say this as much as we can, you will always find cadres or hear stories of comrades meeting in some dark corners, trying to come up with their own machinations. And it is those machinations that tend to drive a message in the region and beyond, and the diaspora, that there are serious challenges in the country. But when you come to South Africa, you struggle to really locate where those challenges are.
Okay, Ramaphosa has positioned himself as an anti-corruption activist for many years, and in 2020, I mean, after all is said and done, he did take a number of key anti-corruption steps that are said to maybe have heightened tensions between the ANC factions that, you know, even though the party would not like to have that, does seem to exist. Is the Phala Phala scandal a fallout of these factions, these steps that he took in a fight against corruption, or this is just a clear case of what happened?
Well, I missed the last part of your question and would want to answer from having understood what your question was.
I'm happy to repeat it. I'm saying that Ramaphosa came up as an anti-corruption activist, right? And in that time, he has done quite a number of things to move the anti-corruption fight forward. As in 2020, some of these key anti-corruption steps are said to be what is heightening the tensions in the ANC between the various factions. So my question is the Phala Phala scandal a fallout of these internal tensions, or it is just what it is, a case different from party politics?
Well, it's really different from party politics. I sit in the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Cadres have discussed this issue. The president has voluntarily submitted himself to appear before the Integrity Committee on those allegations. So there's no issue at all. We are a self-respecting organization. We do not allow issues that play themselves out in the public to have influence on how we are expected to run organizational affairs. Of course, we note those where they've got a bearing, like the Phala Phala issue, where they've got a bearing on our own reputation, on our own public spending. It does become concerning. And we always tell the truth about all of this and say, this is the position and direction that the ANC wants to be taking. But we have spoken about all our anti-corruption measures. We have taken resolutions that impose on what the ANC ought to do where their member has been indicted or charged to appear in a court of law on criminal activities. In many instances, we ask those cadres to step aside. What has now become practice is that comrades out of their own accord step aside without having to be asked by the organization. This is a sign of discipline on the part of our cadres.
So, Cyril Ramaphosa took over the leadership of the ANC, elected by Parliament to the highest office. Another vote is due soon. How will this affect his chances?
Not at all. I mean, nominations are done. President Ramaphosa has been nominated, qualifies, is on the ballot paper alongside Zweli Mkhize. The democratic wishes and will of branches will prevail when we go to conferences. If he's elected as president, he will come back and discharge responsibilities of a president. There's no issue at all.
All right, I think this is a good place for us to take a very quick break. When we come back, the conversation will continue. We'll be looking at the cost of corruption in South Africa for the people. What needs to be done? Stay with us.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Good to know you're still with us. This is still One Slot News Central. We're looking at the controversies in South African political space. The president, the Phala Phala case, and of course, the intrigues within the ANC. We still have Mr. Mabe with us, and he's been speaking on the efforts of the ANC to keep it together so that they can provide the service that they want for the people of South Africa. Now, the cost of corruption in South Africa in 2009 was estimated, according to President Ramaphosa, to be around 500 billion rand. Then an amount, they say, is equivalent to about a tenth of the GDP of Africa's most industrialized economy. What are some of the impact of these seeming corruption cases to the South African economy and this loss to the economy of South Africa?
Well, it is very much concerning, especially the price of corruption. You know, corruption does not know any affiliation. You know, corruption is not corruption by members of the ANC or by members of any other political party. Corruption is corruption by individuals. The act of corruption is one committed by individuals, not by political parties. A political party does not send people to commit corruption. When we talk about corruption, we must also have the courage to be able to then say, in conducting your corruption investigation activities, name and shame those involved in corrupt activities. Show what steps have been undertaken to deal with this. Coming out of the 2012 National Conference, we had adopted a resolution on the establishment on the Commission on State Capture. This was 2017. This was a commitment on our part to deal with acts of corruption that could have played themselves within public institutions, involving individuals, not because they are members of the ANC, because we have understood that it is individuals who commit these acts of corruption, not sent by anyone. The ANC never sat in a conference and said that during this tenure of our governance, we are going to send these 10 cadres to go and steal money from the public purse. We've never done that. We always hope that those we entrust with the responsibility to lead will do what is best for the people. We believe in the capacity and ability of the people we entrust with power and responsibility, that it will be nothing else but the organization that they prioritize in the fulfillment of their tasks.
There are talks about possible impeachment. What can you tell us about it, and what does the Constitution say about the rules of engagement if that was to be something that's being explored?
Well, you are going back to my first answer. The purpose why Parliament engaged on Section 89 was to establish if there are sufficient grounds to consider an impeachment of the sitting president. That is what this process was all about. But the ANC, unless it is a motion that the ANC has put forward itself, the ANC will never support efforts brought about by other political parties to remove its president from the seat of government. Because the president of the ANC, for him to be president of the country, is the resolution of the ANC conference. It is not an entitlement that he imposed on himself. It is a responsibility granted to him by a resolution of the African National Congress.
Okay, I understand we have some videos that are relevant to this conversation. Let's take a look at them and we'll come back and continue.
This impeachment process so that we can be vindicated, because majority of you say, no, these guys are just attacking the president. The last point is this nonsense of saying he did not steal our money, it is his money. They stole his money, he didn't steal our money. He stole our money. We have shares in those dollars. Once they land here, they must be declared so that we can get our portion. He must put them in the bank so that it's an income, he can pay income tax. So we have our portion in the dollars there. He stole our money, it's our money. He brings money here, he doesn't pay exchange rates, he doesn't pay tax, and then the super intellectuals come and say, it is not our money. That money was driven on which road? It landed at which airport? Who's paying for that airport? It was driven on which road? It stopped at which robots? It's our money. He must pay for all of that. So when he didn't declare that money, he was hiding our tax. And when you hide our tax, you are stealing from us. Therefore, he stole from us. We have interest. We want our portion for South Africa. That's our money. So this nonsensical argument that, no, they stole his money, doesn't arise. It's our money too. Once it lands here, it must be declared so that we can take our portion. So tomorrow in Parliament, we call on all members of Parliament to do the right thing. Do not vote against the Constitution in defense.
Mr. Phala Mabe is still with us. I just wanted to, Mr. Mabe, if you can hear me, if you can put on your camera. Okay, great. I don't know if you heard that video or you saw it. I wanted to, that's the EFF leader, Malema. What's your thinking on his position? Is there something you'd like to say?
Well, not much. Safe to say that we are leaving that to reputable institutions. I don't think that I'm capable enough myself to determine which one is a crime and which one is not. What I know as a leader of the ANC, as a member of the African National Congress, as a patriotic South African, is that we all have got to account for our actions, regardless of which position we occupy. The position of the position of occupied by our president as president of the republic does not exonerate him from accountability. The assurance he has given us in the leadership is that when so invited, he will account. So we are comforted by that. And we have encouraged all members of the ANC to always put themselves in a position where they will be able to account when so required. So it is this accountability to the public that comforts us. If there are instances of criminal activities involving anyone, regardless of what position they hold, we leave those to law enforcement agencies so that we do not find ourselves doing what we are not capacitated to do, because we may end up arriving at wrong conclusions, not guided by any reality out there. So political parties have expressed themselves. There are investigations currently ongoing. The president has said that he will cooperate with all of these different investigations. We are not going to stop political parties from making their own statements publicly. These political parties are independent from the ANC. They are welcome to say what they think makes sense to their own political parties. But the ANC can't go and dictate to them, say this, don't say that. No. I mean, in a democratic space, how do you, where people have got freedom of speech, how do you dictate to them what they can and cannot say? When they say issues or raise allegations about individuals, it is important that they also back that with facts to assist law enforcement agencies who could be doing some work or investigating some cases on the matter in question.
Okay, there are, aside from Malema, let's take this other video as well, and then get your reaction and continue with the questioning.
So should Parliament meet tomorrow to deliberate on the report and adopt it, the ANC MPs will vote against it. So that's the decision. We will vote against it because, as you are aware, that that report will set in other processes in motion, like impeachment, and we are not supporting the process that will lead to the impeachment of the president.
There are those who say that the ANC seems to be embroiled in one crisis after the other, and they're saying that the damage that's being done by the ANC to the South African people is, they are becoming impatient, really. So my question would be, what would you say to those that are saying maybe it's time to end the ruling party? Is that something that will be as a party member? What do you have to say?
Well,
it has served its purpose.
Power.
I think that's one of the arguments that has been put forward, that the party has served its purpose. It seems it's more embroiled in controversies than actually serving the people. Maybe all of these crises is heralding the end for the ruling party.
Well, I mean, power is a contested terrain, as you know. Opposition parties exist out there. They too want to be in power. Most of those that are saying the ANC has reached the end of the road are people who are not voting for the ANC. I mean, it means that at every election where the ANC won, their own focus was to debase the ANC. However, the people still entrusted the ANC with the responsibility to lead and govern. So we can't be shocked when a member of the opposition says something to the effect that the ANC has reached the end of the road, because it is in their interest that the ANC gets deposed from power. That's what they would want to see.
Okay, are there any lessons being learned from this experience by the ruling party, really? Because it is a lot for the people to really wrap their head around. Is there any lessons being learned? And what is the ANC doing to address the concerns being raised by the people over the continuing crisis?
Well, if we did not draw any lessons, we would not have put forward the kind of mechanisms like stepping aside, the Integrity Commission, enhancing our own disciplinary measures as an organization, making sure that we direct our public representative to stand for what is right and fulfill what we have promised the people of this country. Ensure that the people they put in positions of responsibility are the ones who do not have questionable track records. This we have said. We have said all of this out of the lessons learned. So we learn lessons every day. And it is out of these lessons that we are able to make the ANC an even better instrument in the hands of our people.
All right. A lot is happening. Just paint us from your perspective as somebody who's actively involved in the politics of South Africa and the reactions of the people. What are the likely scenarios that you see in how all of these will end?
Well, I wouldn't even want to begin a process of painting scenarios. There is a parliamentary process. The ANC will be watching that process closely. We've already given our members a directive. What I can tell your viewers here in the diaspora and everywhere else in the world is that the ANC will never participate in a process of removing its own president when it did not initiate such a process. The ANC will always protect and safeguard its own majority to make sure that from its position of power given to it by the people of South Africa is not taken away through some back doors and all of that. Political parties, it's in their very nature that from time to time they will raise issues like impeachment, motions of no confidence, and all of that. How do you expect other political parties, not in the ANC, not having an alliance with the ANC, not in a coalition with the ANC, to vote to support and affirm the ANC? It's not possible. They did not vote for us. They are not going to stand to protect and help us be sustained in power. It's not in their interest.
All right, Mr. Phala Phala, it's been good talking with you. Thank you very much for sharing your time and your thoughts on events in South Africa.
No, thanks.